Well, well, well. There it is. Good old Nerub-ar Palace. As well as this weird Barney. I was going to say something I probably shouldn't say in the first minute of the video, but something like that. Greetings and welcome to, I suppose, a Nerub-ar Palace / Season 1 War Within tier review with me, Treggyz. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the raid, on the bosses, maybe a little bit about Mythic plus Dungeons. I'm not sure if I'm going to talk about Mythic plus Dungeons, mainly the bosses, on both Heroic and Mythic, I suppose. So, let's get into it, shall we? Usually I don't like do stuff like this, but it's like, kind of do something different every here and there. And usually I have recently settled for doing vault videos with the occasional live stream and the occasional short clip, associated with the live streams here and there. So, it's good to do something a little outside the box. And just want to thank everybody once again for watching and subscribing to YouTube and all that good stuff. I hope everybody enjoys. I'm not really working with a script or anything for this video, so I'm just kind of listing off random things for the bosses. I might talk a whole lot about boss abilities, might not talk a whole lot about boss abilities, might just whinge about the one thing about the fight I didn't like, or the one thing I did really like. It's going to be a little random, so apologies in advance. It's still going to be a good, however long, hour plus ish podcast sort of thing to listen to. So hopefully it's still enjoyable in that way. Let's go ahead and jump right into the first boss of Nerub-ar Palace, Ulgrax the Devourer. In this review, I'm going to generally compare bosses to other bosses in like similar positions in the raid. So I'm going to compare Ulgrax, the starting boss, with other recent starting bosses. I suppose I'll limit it to Dragonflight because that's sort of like the easiest comparison, because I can't really remember I can actually remember the Shadowlands starting bosses, but admittedly, during Shadowlands I didn't do any Mythic at all. So, I think we tried Mythic Terror like one night when we had 20 people. Maybe we killed it, I can't remember. But anywho, I'll just keep it to Dragonflight for now. So, Ulgrax. Good old first boss of Nerub-ar Palace. Big old crabby lobster man. Not a too terribly complicated fight. Pretty much just dodging web. Not spreading your poison onto other people. Using your poison to clear web. And occasionally having to run out a big group soak that has to get soaked by half the group. And so the other soak, when it comes up later, the other half of the group can soak it. Then you go into a phase, the boss goes away. You run away from him charging around the platform, have all the ads swarm your group. When the ads die, they drop meat on the ground. Then around that point, the boss comes back up, but he's immune and he's very angry and yelling at your group. So you feed him the meat of his ads to calm the boss back down, so you can go back into phase 1. What a fight. Compared to other recent first bosses and raids, again, I'm going to limit this to Dragonflight primarily. I think that, for me, Ulgrax would have been a better boss if it had been shorter of a fight, because it just sort of takes, I think even in, geared groups, it still takes, 4 or 5 minutes to kill this guy. I'm not super sure. I haven't, looked at any, record logs, but I'm pretty sure it's just a long fight in general. Now, is that me reporting my groups that I've done the boss with, and then it's always been longer ish kills, but let me look at it for recent weeks. I guess nowadays people are killing it in like 2 or 3 minutes, mainly 3 minutes. But like first kills of this guy, I'm pretty sure for Wa, our first kill was like 8 minutes or something. Yeah, for Wa, our first ever kill was 9 minutes, and then our second kill was also 9 minutes. Then we kind of slowly started losing time, like shaving a minute, 2 minutes off, and then another minute, then another minute. Then we obviously didn't kill it for a while, and then we more than halved our time of the original kill. So not too bad, but yeah, it's just not like a terribly complex fight. It's just again very very long for a starting boss. I'm curious how. Actually, I was gonna say, pretty sure even in Mirror Soul and stuff, it was like a 4 minute boss fight tops or something. Yeah, normal route, kind of like the direct last first boss. Yeah, the first kill for that guy was 5 minutes in Wa. So it's just like, yeah, almost probably the longest boss fight for a starting boss. And I think for me, the first boss is sort of be like, it's like the wake up boss, make sure everybody's, you know, ready to game. It shouldn't be like too terribly complex because you just want to get through it, kill it, get some loot, maybe nothing like crazy exciting on it, right? You don't want like the best gear coming off the first boss. I think like the only notable drop on that guy is like the trinket, the tank trinket thing, and then like the two-handed weapon. Again, I'm just in general not a big fan of the old first boss endurance test. Let's just put it that way. Like I don't think it would have been so bad. Like either like what Blizzard should have done with this fight to make it better would have been to either obviously just like reduce his health for like the first, you know, how do I frame that? Have it so his health could have been lower, just so you're not like literally fighting him for so long. Like sure, I'll bet like super good guilds killed it like 6 minutes, 7 minutes like their first time, but yeah, I don't know. I just think that like the way they did the phase 2 for it, where the boss is just fully gone and you're fighting ads, and even when the actual boss comes back up, it's like you're still just kind of like fighting ads. The boss is immune until you feed him. Like it could have been like a funny gimmick to like I don't know. Like what actually would have probably been a more interesting mechanic. Maybe there would have been a way to like milk DPS if the boss hadn't been immune, and he's just like kind of slow channeling his like roar or whatever. What if it had been like he takes normal damage, but like he just does like literally does no mechanics? I mean, honestly, the boss doesn't do very many mechanics in the first place. But like, what if he did something more interesting during the fight, or like another soak or something? Right? It would have been kind of interesting to have a like we can milk some damage in the in the roar or something. I don't know. Something like that could have been interesting in my opinion. But overall, I do think that just again in general for a starting boss, I think Ulgrax kind of crappy guy for a lobster man. Not very tasty for a first boss. I don't want to really talk about heroic too much, but I do remember for like evade my casual guild, we literally one shot it on heroic, and we had basically no idea what we were doing still because it was like the first night we were all like super undergeared, and we still like one shot the first boss on heroic because he just doesn't do anything. And even on Mythic, it's not all that harder. It just literally is like, oh, if you cleave your poison, you kill people, or you walk into webs with too many people close to you, you kill people, right? It's like there's just nothing that happens, and it's just too long of a fight. Just sucked. Ulgrax sucks for a first boss. Maybe not the worst ever first boss, but still, I think that's firmly belongs to like the Guardian in Shadowlands, the Sepulchre raid, maybe. And I want to talk mainly about Dragonflight compared to Dragonflight, but that's like the only other like weird starting first boss that I can think of in recent memory. I guess keep it moving. Let's go on. Go ahead and be done with our lobster dinner at Ulgrax and move on to Bloodbound Horror. Good old BBH. The standard, maybe not so standard, but the upstairs downstairs group split mechanic for the raid. Where whoever goes downstairs has to deal with priority ads, and the group upstairs has to just sit and fight the boss. Nothing too crazy. Nothing crazy besides like occasionally having to have the whole raid kind of spread. Can't really have both groups on top of each other because if you're all stacked, you have that spread. It's a little harder to do it because you have like 20 people on like one little island, and it just makes it a whole messy situation. So usually you would just like, I think every single time I've done this fight, it's just like very kind of clear. Like the tanks, you just like assign groups with the tanks, and the tanks pretty much just call out like where they want the group to be at all times. Not too bad. The only real interesting thing about the fight is like the beam, I guess, and that the tank that stays upstairs controls the position of the beam, even though it's not exactly like it isn't exactly where the boss is pointing at. That's where the beams go. It's to the sides, it's at his shoulders, so the tank still has to position it correctly. Even though it's like not super perfect. But I do think like in my mind, comparing this fight to Igara, I think for boss twos in recent raids, I feel like Igara has to be the maybe not like the best ever second boss in any raid, but I do think like I remember being pretty hyped about killing Igara in Mythic on in Amir in both my guilds because it was like a pretty tough fight, like mechanically. This fight isn't like comparatively, it's just not the same. Like the hardest thing about it is just literally group split, and like oops, someone got caught downstairs by the beam because they weren't paying attention. So that group's just kind of screwed on their damage now, or whatever, right? And it's just compared to Igara, where you had to juggle the different weapons, like all the debuffs, and even just like making sure that like the tanks are still on top of each other. Not really the craziest tank mechanic, but compared to this, where it's just like, oh, tank one takes big frontal to get grouped downstairs, other tank slides to position beam. That's all you really do. Make sure to taunt ad and downstairs. It's just. Gara was a good old fight. And Bloodbound Horror, I think, for second bosses, following Igara, not all that great. And that's all that really needs to be said about Bloodbound Horror. It's again, just the good old base upstairs, downstairs, split phase, split group sort of fight. Haven't had one in a minute, so why not? I don't even think the boss gets any harder as the fight goes on. Outside of like if you literally lose people. I imagine he does eventually berserk, but like I've never seen the berserk happen, I don't think. Even in Evade. I don't think there's anything else to really talk about for Bloodbound Horror. Just again, I think directly compared to Igara, not all that great. It's a second boss, like it's better than Ulgrax because there's a little more to do for individual players, but not all that much. It's AoE priority cleave fight, upstairs downstairs split, rinse and repeat, move on. Just like moving on to Sikran, captain of make box fight. Good old. God, what was the thing I said? Ghoster people to. Oh, that was my like thing I was saying when we were doing this fight in Evade. Ghoster people too. uh, the charge mechanic on Sikran has to be like one of those all-time good boss mechanics. I have to say, in my personal opinion, it's like nothing quite as fun being being both the person calling out to make box and being a person who has to make the box here and there. And it's just like definitely gets messed up at times. People get too bunched up. They don't give each other room. People get squished. Someone moves at the last second and they kill themselves, getting double tapped by the charge. Oh man, I like Sikran. I think for a third boss, compared to, I suppose, compared to Volcaros, Amir and I guess it'd be, what was that? That was that fight called the Aberration boss. I'm not thinking. Oh no, it was like amalgamation of flame. I can't remember. There was like the blueberry boy. I feel like this is definitely like way better than those fights. How does Sikran compare to Taros? It's like a tank and spank with the occasional group stack and spread and like very coordinated movement. There's no boxes in Taros though. At least not that I remember. I don't want to get too like hung up on like comparing it to Taros. I don't think I should do that. I'll just kind of keep it compared to Volcaros in my mind, where what was really the thing about Volcaros was like the occasional group splits up, fights boss around donut. Occasionally have to do a soak at a very specific time and drop shit on the ground in a specific way or something. I can't remember exactly. Dodge Shadow of Death. That was Volcaros. Again, I very much think Sikran compared to Volcaros and the others. I think Sikran is like actually a good fight because again, I just think the charge mechanic is like such a funny thing to deal with. It's one of those things where you get picked for it and you kind of like shit a brick thinking about like fucking it up or whatever. It's just me reporting on myself doing it in Prague and WA, but it's a good fight. I like the charge mechanic a whole lot. I guess the rest of the fight, like Ghoster people too, the lines to clear the ghost, and all the shit on the ground you leave. Like there really isn't all that much to Sikran. It is literally just make box. Hopefully group makes good enough box that it doesn't kill the rest of the group, and you don't run out of space while you're killing it for the first time. It's a very, very messy and fun fight. Very much, very, very much, I'm going to sound like a broken record, like Sikran. Make box good boss, in my opinion. Ghosts are people too. Good meme. Good meme me.
9 seconds.
I let it. Kobe died.
You got 9 seconds.
God, this extra ghost really fucked it up. And now you guys are kind of all over the place with those.
Res is available.
We kind of have no space to finish the fight. That's the problem at this point with the extra few ghosts we had.
Yeah, okay,
I'm gonna drop a bubble over the right ranged.
You guys can still get it.
I have SLT. This is a sacrifice.
Kinda just like
this.
yourself up here, yeah.
If you get charges, take it out. Take it way far out if you get charges. Just don't double tap yourselves. Watch your feet, even though you have no real space to dodge. Way far out. Try not to double tap yourselves.
Good job, good job. Let's go.
Good job, jeez.
Oh
Finally.
my
Easy
god.
mode, bro. Easy.
Super.
Yo,
Easy.
don't
Oh
give
my
it to
gosh.
Nas. Don't give it to Nas.
I get that that's kind of on me. It got really messy at the end because I kind of just stopped calling, but fuck, that's annoying.
Dude, Argalon is like, oh, where the bow?
Argalon's polearm dropped.
Don't tell
Oh,
him.
I got
Let's
the
go.
bow as a BOE or a warbound item.
So what was that? 3 extra ghosts?
Like 7.
Yeah,
That was so
it
much
felt
fun.
like it. Whatever. At least it's dead. Let's go do trash, and then we'll take a nice break before we do Rasha'nan.
Good job, guys.
I guess moving on to Rasha'nan. The dungeon boss turned into a raid boss. Kind of an interesting fight in that, well, maybe not all that interesting, but interesting in that you fight the boss for the first time at Dawnbreaker, and then you come into the raid and you finish it off. So the boss starts with lower HP, even though it still has as much health as, you know, the other bosses comparatively. What do I think about Rasha'nan? I think similar to Box Boss, Make Big Triangle is also like an all-time good like raid call-out sort of thing. We like making shapes. We're at the end of the day, we're all still children, and we like playing with shapes or something, I guess. Or at least, I don't know, I'm just reporting on myself again. How about the rest of the fight, besides making shapes and triangles and squares? Good old web bomb mechanic, where 4 people run out, they drop their shit, they run back in, except they gotta stay slightly out on Mythic, or else their lines that are all attached to each other snap and kill other people. Fine, I think that was a fine mechanic. I think it's like actually completely fine. I can't really criticize it in any way. I think the only thing, there's like, I think there was like 2 main, like my one main gripe. Actually, no, I guess I'll just keep it to 2. My 2 main gripes with Rasha'nan would be when you get the ad circle spawns on you. Like, you definitely had to always press a defensive, because like what would happen when you drop your ads, they would, like, without fail, immediately melee you. So not only are you taking the damage from dropping the ads, but then you're also tanking the ads for a second, because it's like almost impossible for the tank to already be tanking them. If you have a tank like on it already, right? So I just think that's kind of like if you needed a defensive at a very specific moment, otherwise in the fight. Otherwise? English is... My English is super good this week. If you needed your defensive anywhere else in the fight, sometimes you'd be out of luck, unless you're playing a class that has like defenses out the wazoo. And my other gripe with the fight is that like you're fighting the boss in like a big ass area. It's like probably the largest boss platform, definitely in this raid, I think. This or Broodtwister, I suppose. But like you're fighting the boss, and like the entire time you're fighting the boss, he's like already throwing poison on the ground. You would think the boss dropping in, moving around, would clear the new area you're going to be fighting the boss at. But what actually would happen half the time is you just get screwed, and the boss will like leave poison puddles in like not even just like the direct center of like the new area you're fighting at, but there'll be like the group soak that happens right after he moves, that will just have like poison all up in it, and it's just like I get it, it's like something to just like work around and dodge correctly as best you can, considering you're all about to get yoinked into potentially poison or off the edge. You know, it's just like, I really wish that mechanic had been a little more consistent in that, like, oh yeah, always, like, you're always going to have like the, I don't know, all the melee always clears and like 10 yards away from the boss for, you know, at least starting the new phase, air quotes. But like, again, definitely a good like wake up. Like, I think Rasha'nan is definitely like the first, no, I'm not gonna say hard boss in the raid, but like definitely the first boss that like you really do need to be paying attention to like what you're standing in. Because if you're ever standing in poison, ever in the wrong spot, ever about to bait poorly, the lines poorly, right, you're gonna kill people. Like, sure, you could say like, well, but Sikran has box, and if you're making bad box or you're squishing your charge teammates, you're gonna kill people as well. But I think Rasha'nan's a slightly better boss for that, especially being halfway through the raid. Like, maybe Rasha'nan could have been like a little more punishing in some other ways that were like, I feel like the way Rasha'nan was punishing is just that, like, literally just being in a bad spot. But if you're like moving correctly on Rasha'nan, like, it's actually like a lot easier. Not like never standing in poison or web, never getting caught by a line, never standing inside triangle as it gets made. How would Rasha'nan compare to Council? Council of Dreams? Council of Nightmares? A lot less overlaps, I suppose, than that fight. The not king of overlap fight, but be prepared for this specific overlap. That's what Council was in Amir. And I guess Rasha'nan was the other one. At least, like, for me, I never did a spider. I never did Sinarth and Vault. Well, I did try like one. We tried one night and evade. We couldn't quite do it. And then I think we stopped doing Mythic after that. Got very close. Yeah, it's really hard to compare Rasha'nan. Like, I do think, like, of the two bosses, the easier comparison would be Rasha'nan, but like, it's still like Rasha'nan was like a super good fight still. Like, I liked Rasha'nan a whole lot. Rasha'nan, or not Rasha'nan, Rashok, right? That's the one in Dragonflight. Did they literally both start with Rash? I'm not crazy, am I? Wow. I can't believe Blizzard would do this. Barely one raid removed. There's two raids almost released back to back. Let's not include Amir at this moment. Where the fourth boss of the raid starts with Rash in their name. Why would Blizzard do this? Yeah, Rashok was a good fight. Like, for me, Rashok's definitely still like for a single target mid-boss wall fight. I definitely still think Rashok's like top three. Top three for me all time. The other ones, though. Princess, of course. I actually like Nimue too. Yeah, Rashok solidly for single. I'm not including the spider ads on Rasha'nan, the current one. I'm not going to include that, but like for two kind of mid-wall, single target-ish fights, Rashok's definitely better, but like Rasha'nan's okay. I just wish the fight would have been a little more consistent with like some of the weird mechanics, but overall it was fine for a mid-raid wall. Kind of the last easy boss. Air quotes. I say after, evade my guild I raid lead. It took us 39 pulls to kill it. 2 months after the patch had dropped. Two months after the raid is open. But again, it's a casual guild. It's like kind of the limit of where I was expecting us to go. Yeah. Anything else Rasha'nan? I don't think so. I guess we are moving on. Go to boss number 5 for, I imagine, everybody. Everybody but Evade, because I was going to be a rebel and have us go to Princess first. Because I thought, personally, of the two bosses, the one I didn't want to try to set up everyone's add-ons for, and have to do the world markers every single time. Save myself some sanity and evade. I was going to have us go to Princess first, because you get to kind of just sit and practice phase 1 over and over and over and over and over and over again until you eventually get it right, and then you practice the phase, and you go back to phase 1, basically. So, and again, in my mind, for evade, maybe we would have had some trouble hitting the DPS check if we had continued in Mythic Nerub-ar, but I still think we could have, could have had fun with Princess. It just would have been a very long process to get us up to the amount of pulls to actually kill it. Yeah, I'm not talking about Princess, we're talking about Broodtwister. Good old egg boy. The premier mass AoE fight, I suppose. I guess the main intended mass AoE fight, I should say. Where you're basically always cleaving from the boss onto the worm, or onto a spider, or, AoEing to kill parasites. How do I think Broodtwister was? For me, getting to play Fury in Nerub-ar for this fight, I think I did like Broodtwister in a masochistic way, or something sadistic way, I can't remember. One of the problems, though, for it, even just getting to do the fight, because of the way that World of Warcraft players play the game now, it was like literally our first night starting prog for Broodtwister. It was like, no joke, 45 minutes to an hour of setting up add-ons and add-on settings and weak auras for Broodtwister. It was again, that was like, I wanted to avoid having to do that in Evade, so Princess would have been the answer for me. So you don't really have to do that. But hey, at least when you do get the weak auras working correctly, you could still have people mess up the eggs, because you had to, if you haven't done the fight on Mythic, first of all, you're welcome. That's not fair to say, but the thing on Mythic is the main change, I feel, is that you get double egg break mechanic on everybody, and you need to have 2 people stand on the intended egg break and every single set of eggs is also doubled. So you're basically like you're doubling down the entire thing. I think for me, again, playing Fury Warrior on this fight, the one thing I'll be very thankful for of Broodtwister is that it was I think it's the only fight in the raid where people actually used it. We get to go back to playing anger management on Fury for this fight because like it just makes your cooldowns like you always have something for every single ad set. You always have, you know, your Odin Fury, your Roar, you got your mini wreck, like you got, you know, just like it kind of just like it's like kind of another like Fury Warrior got like two really good fights for sure in this tier, like big spontaneous burst cleave, obviously Queen, and again in my opinion right here right now this fight because anger management is just for me a good Fury Warrior tier revolves around playing anger management talent. Like I don't really go for the reckless abandon talent. I get it. It's like bigger cooldown, spikier cooldown. But I'm the guy who played all of Legion with Convergence of Fates on, and I don't know why. Again, I spent 2 years in that, you know, spend rage to get cooldown back. You know, I just enjoy that. I think Fury is such a good class when you get to play anger management, and in general, right now, I really like classes that like doing rotation correctly and getting your cooldowns back faster for it is like that's just like a winning rotation in my mind. That's like the main reason I enjoy playing like Fire Mage and Outlaw Rogue on the side so much right now. They both basically do that. Or you're like for Fire Mage, I guess you're like getting more combust for playing correctly is maybe the right way to say it. I'm not sure. Anyway, going back to Broodtwister, I'm getting real sidetracked. This is gonna be like a weird podcasty video where I'm just gonna like ramble about stuff. I'm gonna like randomly go on a tangent about something that doesn't matter at all compared to what we're supposed to be talking about. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be real good. Where was I even at in Broodtwister? I literally got so sidetracked I can't remember. But like, yeah, like it was like the add-on AoE fight that like caused Eris to lose his mind in Wa. Because it is just like I didn't want to lose my brain in Evade either for, you know, being the raid leader, having to mark the eggs perfectly every single time. And the funny thing for me, this is going to probably come off as like this might come off as like a douchey brag or something, but like towards the end of our prog on Broodtwister, it's like for me, I knew like where the symbols were for like every single like egg set for basically the entire fight, except maybe like the very last ones, like in the end of the last section of the room, just because like we'd very rarely gotten there at that point. Like we'd only gotten there a handful of times, but so it was always one of those things that was frustrating being. I was gonna say, did we do 200 plus pulls on Broodtwister? Let me look it up because I need this information. Or I want this information. Correct way to say it. Okay, no, we didn't go 200 plus pulls on Broodtwister. We were at 122 before we killed it. It was our fourth hardest boss in the raid. I guess like actually moving into talking about Broodtwister, like the fight, let's not get sidetracked anymore. I don't know if I have the camera on me, but I took a brief break recording for over an hour. The funny thing is, something I forgot about that was like a nightmare for me, like when we were starting that fight. Goddamn swirlies on Broodtwister. I almost forgot about him too on Rasha'nan. What is it with goddamn swirlies? Every fight, having to watch your feet. It's crazy. Always watch your feet and WoW. Yeah, Broodtwister is like one of those fights that was like, on paper, if everyone always breaks the eggs correctly, there's no weird, oh, my add-on told me to go to this one instead problems, which was like probably about a quarter of the pulls. More than a quarter even, potentially, is like someone having an add-on issue. Or, suddenly there are things telling them something different compared to like what, should be happening. It's just like world of add-on craft, man. Again, it makes sense. Why not make save brain power for playing and doing other things, and just have it where an add-on will tell you like, need to make 4 pairs really quickly, and the add-on just does it for. I don't know. It's disappointing. Maybe is the correct thing to say, because it's like Blizzard doesn't want add-ons to be so powerful. Maybe not. Maybe don't make fight mechanics that very much are easily solved with like something like that quickly, or correctly, or I don't know, feel like they should be solved by add-ons. But I don't. But then again, it's like private auras. Like what happens whenever Blizzard does private auras for a boss? People just find a workaround that is just more cumbersome, but it still does effectively the same thing. It's a real tug of war to me. And I'm going to sound like a broken record. To me, as a Fury Warrior, getting to play Fury on Broodtwister is like, I'm definitely like one of the people in that raid group that is kind of just loving life, because I get to press all my buttons. I get to go full hog, and even though the rest of the fight might be miserable for everybody else, I'm enjoying myself. So as a Fury Warrior, I have to say I liked Broodtwister. As somebody with little to no responsibility, the only thing I had to do was obviously go to eggs when I get the mechanic, and kick a worm occasionally, and every other time just don't get hit by swirlies, press buttons, kill boss, right, eventually. That was for me, a Fury Warrior again. Good fight. I guess for me, Broodtwister was the fight where I wasn't doing very well on. I guess like parse wise, like I try not to be like a parse monkey. I'm really not. I don't think I got that in me anymore. I used to be good about like trying to hunt for parses, but I just like kind of don't do it anymore at all. But for me, like looking at over like our first, 50 polls or so, and I was like consistently parsing gray. Broodtwister was the fight for me where I started using lorgs.io or whatever. Probably put a link up on the screen. Not a sponsorship or anything, but very useful to figure out where the really good players and or the parse monkeys of your class are pressing their buttons, so you can do your best to replicate it and maybe do well yourself. Lorgs was the fight for me where I was massively messing up my rotation for, again, probably like the first weekend or so on the fight. I can't remember exactly how long it was. We were doing that fight for a while. It might have been like 2 weekends actually, where I was just like full on inting my rotation. But yeah, I can just look up and see exactly where other people are setting their cooldowns. They're literally the people who did like numerically the best for public logs, right, for your class. Like me, so we'll try your best to copy them. There's nothing really wrong with going and looking and seeing like there's like some small, rotational change you can do to get more DPS out of it, Broodtwister was that fight for me where I was like, yeah, I need to abuse Lorgs more often. I'm pretty sure for every fight after in Nerub-ar Palace, I was checking Lorgs for, like start of the night, just to see like where press is at, like especially like for court. I'll talk about that later. The court arms opener, but anyway, I think that's it for Broodtwister. Fury Warrior, seal of approval. Everyone else, like Frost, DK, Fury, fucking love that fight. Everybody else hates it, I bet. Might be different nowadays. It's probably some other classes that are blasting it now. I think when I was talking about Sikran earlier and saying that I enjoyed Sikran, and it was like a recent top 3 single target fight, I think it's fair to say that Princess is also a top 3 single target fight for me, or top 5. Princess is 100% top 3. Sikran's probably top 5 is probably the correct thing to say. Princess on Mythic is quite the enjoyable little fight if you've never done it. Could be seen as a little annoying as a melee DPS, where if you happen to get picked for any mechanic whatsoever, you very much have to go do the mechanic. You have to go stand in the exact perfect spot to do the mechanic, and then also run out to shoot out your orbs in a spot that is safe for the rest of the raid. Even with that in mind, as a melee DPS, Princess was a very enjoyable fight. Like, although, God, I struggled on Princess. I was, again, I don't know what's been, like, wrong with me. Like, I'm definitely going to talk about it later on, at, like, towards the end, after I cover, like, every boss and queen. But I think, like, overall, this tier, I kind of feel like I played, like, I feel like so I've only been raiding with WoW for three raid tiers so far. I joined in Abber. That was my first like real Mythic cutting edge tier, and I felt like I could have done a lot better overall. And I would like to think that in Amir I kind of proved myself. Like I performed much better overall. Like I maybe had 1 or 2 bad nights on Smolderon Prague, but I'd like to think like I overall improved, like going from the first tier to the second tier. I feel like going from Amir to Nerub-ar, I've kind of like regressed again. Not like all the way back to where I was at the start of Abber, but I think I'm like kind of like I'm in like the middle ground between like where I was going, and I kind of feel bad. Like I want to say it's like I'm trying to be like more mechanically responsible and not really worrying about like my DPS, unless like it's like a moment where like DPS absolutely matters. Like maybe I'm letting like Eris, I'm like I've like internalized him in my head, saying like your DPS doesn't matter, as like a general statement to the entire raid, not just to me. And like I wonder if I am just like trying to be better about like just playing mechanically better. And I think I would like to think maybe I've done better mechanically this raid tier. Like maybe I was catching swirlies on Sikran, Rasha'nan, Broodtwister. Definitely. There weren't any swirlies on court. I don't think there are any swirlies really on Princess either, but I'm definitely a swirly catcher nowadays, occasionally. But other than that, I'd like to think I'm playing, like doing the actual mechanics correctly for the most part. I'd like to think so. Maybe I'm doing better on that, but like my damage numbers, I think this tier suffered a little bit. But hey, as long as we're killing bosses, that's all that really matters in my mind. But yeah, Princess, going back to like why I went off on that tangent, I remember on Princess specifically, I was dying Like any time I got picked for a mechanic, one of the charges, it always felt like I died. And I was probably definitely like trying to play it too safe for everybody else. I was like running the orb out. Because again, whenever you get picked for a mechanic, for me as a melee, the only thing that could really happen is getting picked for a charge. You got to run the charge to exact pixel, so the ghost is going to land on this exact pixel and be in a good spot for the next charge or the next mechanic or whatever. And then you need to go out to this exact spot in the room, so you're dropping your orbs in a good spot for the rest of the team. And I think for me, whenever I got picked, I would try to play it overly safe for everybody else and not really me, and I would like run to the wall, which with like the orb drop, and I would definitely just kill myself doing that because I'm just like out of range of the healers at that point. Because like again, I definitely had like a night where I was just like kind of fed up, and I literally swapped. I took like the bonus stam talent in like the general warrior tree because I was just like sick of dying to the boss execute, where if you drop below 10%, the boss just like executes you, so you effectively only have like 90% of your health, and trying to like health bot or cookie at that point just isn't going to help you. It would have to be like a hard immunity, which die by the sword is not the like immunity you need for that mechanic. I was definitely struggling, but I think as soon as I was like, well, yeah, I should definitely just like tuck it, I should stay closer. Definitely have I think that was like the fight where a guy was like, okay, I'm gonna bring like 100 health potions with me, so I always got something, and that was like I was definitely bugging Oksana every few pulls for more cookies because I was using them. Again, all that aside, the rest of the fight on Princess was like really enjoyable. I think the the intermission was super cool. Like it is kind of just like a phase of dodging, but it's like an enjoyable phase of dodging. I don't know. As well as like the thing that I don't think I got told it. I think I figured it out on my own. That like as a warrior, you can just full on reflect like any amount of the dash lines. Like if I had been like as an experiment porcupined by the entire rest of the raid team, everyone is dead set on trying to kill me specifically, right? 20 lines intersecting on top of me. The thing I figured out is that Spell Reflect 100% reflects every single line as long as it's all at the same instant, because that's how Spell Reflect works. As long as like you're only supposed to be able to reflect one spell, but if you have multiple spells hit you at the exact same moment, you can reflect multiple spells technically. And the line, not reflect, I shouldn't say reflect, I can deflect an infinite amount of spells as long as they all hit at the exact same like frame, the exact same second. And the thing that definitely saved me later on in our prog on Princess was at the end of each intermission phase, every single person alive gets a line, and it's just kind of like it's just a scary moment because everybody's going to like lose half their HP. But as soon as I figured out, it's like, hey, Spell Reflect just fully negates that. It's like, oh, I come out of the intermission healthy as fuck every time. It was great. Like that was the moment the prog on that fight turned around, and I went back to like the normal talents. I still didn't do very good because when we killed Princess for the first time, and sadly the only time we got to do Princess, but I don't think we're ever gonna re-kill it. Sadly, we like the entire raid was dead for like the last 20-30 seconds, going into like the enraged timer as Eris killed it as a blood DK can do. I really hope before the end of the tier maybe we get to go re-kill that boss again, but I don't think it's going to happen based on what I've heard from the officers. shame because that was a super enjoyable fight, but I think Eris doesn't want to deal with it. So anyway, any fun side things about Princess? Not really. Again, I just think that like Princess is just like an all-around solid fight. Very, very enjoyable for our caliber of guild, I should say. Only 127 pulls to kill it, so not like crazy hard. And again, like I like a fight where you can essentially practice the entire thing in phase 1. That I always think that's kind of a cool thing to do, where you like can just sit and do phase 1 over and over and over until you get it right, and then you can start like moving on. I think I kind of like that, even if it does like, you know, oh, wouldn't you rather just like kill it faster and move on quickly? It's like, I don't know. Not for that fight, I think. Something like that along those lines. Like, and I guess moving on. Moving on to Court. Old red-blue boss, the one where blue doesn't have to do anything and red does all the work. Guess who was blue? This guy. Good old warrior brain coming through. Saving the day. But I think Court was an interesting try for Mythic. Again, like, just in case you've never done the fight on Mythic, but one of the main things is that when you start the fight, the group has to be split up. You get yourself like tagged by one of the two bosses, you stand underneath them, and then you're either red team or blue team. And basically for the entire rest of the fight, if you, a blue person or red person, touch the opposite color, you both kill each other. It's real fun. So it's like you have to have very, you know, two groups have to have very coordinated movement. So, you know, one team can do like this mechanic or be in this spot, vice versa, right? And it's just like, this is one of those things where it's like during the prog, it was like sometimes there would just be, you know, sometimes there would be movements called for the group, but it's like because the group is split up, sometimes it'd be like, okay, we're going towards the wall, and then it's like the other team might also do something similar and it might cause problems. But it's just definitely one of those fights where it was like not super complicated, but it's just like it was just an annoying thing to have to like even like listen to the call outs on sometimes. And again, even like there would be moments where like this happened to me a few times where like later on in the fight when the mechanic is the same on heroic and normal, where occasionally the group gets sucked into the caster guy and pretty much have to like run away and split, right? For the most part, you still have to do that mechanic on Mythic, but usually what happens is it's like one of the two groups at a time, and you would like, you know, it's like, oh, for whoever's getting pulled in first, you split left and right, and then the other people walk straight through as you get sucked in. For me, sometimes it'd be like if you linger even for like half a second, or you just like, I'm not like, if I don't leap, what would happen is like someone would like sprint into me or roll or whatever, right? They'd blink. Like one of those like annoying things where like some people are a little too gung-ho to just like already be through. Very sad. This is on me for being slow, but I don't know. Warrior running, baseline running, maybe not the fastest class. Not all the times. Court was just like, it's again one of these fights that ended up being like in the heat of the moment of like this ability's coming up, this thing's happening at the same time, you know. It's sort of like, it's just like coggy load overload boss a little bit or something, I don't know, where you got your raid leader calling out for movement and it's like this thing's happening at the same time, and it's just like sometimes the message can get crossed between the two groups, and It's a bit of a mess trying to like coordinate the movement at times. Like I definitely think for what is essentially a split, not necessarily upstairs downstairs like group fight, it's definitely just not fun. Like having a mechanic like the color mix kills you or whatever, betrayal, just not fun. All the rest of the fight, like I didn't mind doing like the intermission or like doing the orb soaks. Like that stuff's fine, but again, just weird mechanic. It's the easiest thing in the world to avoid have happen until the time when it just gets fucked up and somebody dies for it. And I guess again, because for me on blue team, I didn't really have to do many mechanics besides occasionally soak orb and move. Got lucky with not having to do the web line ever on Mythic. So basically, my movement was very key. And again, just sometimes we just get messed up, just cause people trying to be in the right spot and being a little too hasty or something like that. I'm trying to think of I do think the only redeeming thing about the fight is like the damage amps you get on the bosses, but even then they're not all that great. Because it's just like then what happens is instead of like killing the bosses, you're just like milking every extra second of high damage. Like when for us in WoW, lusting like the very first caster like dispel damage amp, like every single time it would be like the biggest moment because lust, typically using your first potion, having cooldowns for it was like, you'd probably do like 15-20% of the boss's HP at that moment, maybe more. I'm not sure. Like that was just court was just not fun. I didn't even have to really do any mechanics myself. Although I didn't mind like the damage or the damage amp. I was gonna say I think I had another thing to favorably say about the fight, but I think that's actually that's it. I don't think there is anything else favorable about the fight. I played arms for the 95% of our prog on court, and one of the annoying things for arms is that like for the start of the fight you have a very specific like opener. You only want to send like Thunderous Roar and Blade Storm on the pole, and then you're like once the two bosses are actually on top of each other, then you kind of send everything else, and it's like really annoying on the pole because you kind of like want to send it all at the same time, but it ends up kind of like working out later on to line up your stuff with the amps, so it makes sense 45 seconds after, but it just feels bad on the pole. And basically until you get to the last phase, pretty much your cooldowns as arms are like predetermined. Like if you fuck up one thing, you're setting yourself behind the next damage amp. It was shit. I gotta say. Did not like. There was one night where I played Fury just to give myself a break, but also Fury didn't really do any damage to the actual bosses. It would just be like, oh cool, here's all the ads. Oh, they're all dead. Oh, here's my big burst during the amp, and then I'm doing absolutely nothing else for a minute and a half. Great times. For a penultimate boss, like comparing it to Tindril, like Tindril was a fucking annoying fight too, man. I didn't like Tindril either. Stupid like go soak the orbs and land on the group thing. That was in another fight. That's like if you have to actually go do that mechanic, your damage burst is fucked. At least that's how I remember it. Always going. And then I guess the only other penultimate boss I can compare it to, besides Tendril, didn't like Tendril. Interesting to try dragon riding in a boss fight, but other than that, bad. Did not like. Uh, Echo of Neltharion and Abbers though. What would be like the good things I would say about that? Like, I would say of the 3 fights, that was still like the one that felt like the most satisfying kill, probably, of the fights. Like the only reason it was good to be done with Court is so you could just, move on to the final boss. But like it was also just because like you're free from having to do the cringe mechanic of Court. I guess actually, God, I guess the cringe mechanic for Echo though was like having to deal with that little mini map weak aura you would have, like the honeycomb thing. Also not very good. What is it about penultimate bosses and Blizzard kind of just like doing something really questionable on them and it not being good in the long run, I feel. Here's hoping that Undermine penultimate boss isn't annoying and maybe actually just good and fun. Although I think I already heard that it's basically Echo of Neltharion again. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Court for sure. So we can finally move on to the big ol' booty lady herself, Queen Ansurek. Which I think coming right out the gate for like a end of tier boss on Mythic, I know that when we were doing it, the boss was like turbo nerfed. Not only by the fact that it had been nerfed, but then also we had quite a few levels of the like the percent damage amp buff. So it ended up being like one of those fights where very much do the mechanics correctly, don't die, and it will just fall over. It was our quickest ever cutting edge since I joined the guild. At like, it was sub 200 pulls to do it. And it was like one of those things where, like, the only good thing about killing it was like the actual pull of doing it. It's like, you just like get that feeling when you know you're ahead that like you're gonna kill it before like like the scary thing that would potentially wipe you. Like you just know it's like done. That was like the only good thing about that fight is like it was like we hit that moment where it's like this thing is dead no matter what. So like that's the only real satisfying thing about it. They use prog wise, killing it the first time. I guess like walking through the actual individual phases. I would say I liked phase 1 a lot more on Mythic than I do on like Heroic or otherwise because it's just very fast paced. Like it's like very much a fight where it's like 5 second chunk, this is what you're doing. 5 second chunk, this is what you're doing next, this is what you're doing next, right? I kinda like fights like that where it's sort of you gotta keep up and be aware of what you're about to do next. And it's very much one of those fights where you do so much of phase 1 because it's the start of the fight that like I don't know, you just like start to kind of go autopilot, which can go bad, but I don't know, yeah, it's just sort of nice. I liked the pace up, like the quickened pace on that fight. How do I feel about the extra bombs that they add though? I never had to do it on the 4 bomb version, which I think was only really the people in like the first month or 2 who killed it or would do that fight, where it's like every single time you get bombs, you get an extra bomb, and I'm pretty sure I'm 99% sure you used to have to deal with 4 bombs, but they removed the 4th bomb for the last set, and it's only you have to do 2 bombs, 3 bombs, and another 3 bomb. Unless I didn't really watch I didn't watch like a ton of like the Race to Wolf first, but I'm pretty sure that was a thing. That was a thing back then. So did I like the intermission? Like I kind of like the little like the brief the mini DPS race, but like again, it's just another one of those things where it's like the first time you get to it, you just like have no chance in hell of killing that shield ever, and then like by the time you've done it a dozen times, it's like we're killing the shield every single time, no matter what, unless a quarter of the raid is dead. We're basically just wiping anyway. Sometimes with the intermission of like, the one thing I liked that happened to me with the intermission was like, so like before we got, God, when was it I swapped to Drakdir? I guess we were still doing Broodtwister. So when I swapped my warrior Drakdir, and it was like, oh, you go through Drakdir because it's super useful to have glide on the final boss of the raid because you just negate every single pull in. The funny thing is about the pull in as a warrior, it was pretty easy to deal with anyway because, as I figured out, halfway through the prog is like a pretty safe thing to do as a warrior. Is you literally just turn your camera just before you get pulled in on the intermission. Just before you get pulled in, you just charge. As soon as you get the actual pull, suck in, you just charge and it breaks the momentum, and you're just in melee already. So, Drakdir maybe not like absolute must-have for warrior, but still kind of a cool backup option. It's very good on the platforms. Like it's 100% super good on the platforms, but for the actual phase 1 to phase 2 intermission, not all that necessary, but obviously it can be a lifesaver as a backup thing. Going into phase 2. I guess the only real change for phase 2 is like the portal mechanic, where you gotta occasionally send someone through the portal and you get sent to the other side. I don't know, I think that's a fine mechanic. It's a little sad though, some of the times where you would go through, and me as like a melee DPS, I'm chilling on the edge with like a big dispel circle on me, and I'm kind of just like twiddling my thumbs waiting to be free from this prison. I guess another nice thing I found out as warrior, sadly only found out about it on Mythic, but one of the nice things for phase 2 as a warrior, you can press spell reflect and stand in the ad beam, whatever it's called, the expulsor beam, something or other, from the guys that are on the first and second platforms, and it does like 20 mil damage back to the guy. It is an actual reflect. It is a very nice thing to give warriors. It's always nice when spell reflect deflects stuff, so you don't even have to, you don't take damage, and it effectively doesn't go off. But it is especially nice when reflect literally reflects, and you deal a holy buttload of damage at a time. And then I guess moving into phase 3 for Queen. How do I feel about like the Halandr's bomb mechanic, which I think is a pretty good mechanic. Like especially like I can't remember the Halandr's version all that much because I only ever did that fight on heroic, but on Mythic, especially having like essentially a soft enrage of you will deal with every single bomb and you will make sure they don't get touched by the ring or else you all die. I think that's kind of like I always kind of enjoy a more clever enrage of a fight instead of just boss gets big, red, and angry and just, deletes your tanks in one melee and then they sweep up the rest of the raid. I always kind of like fights like that, although we were never in any fear of hitting the enrage. Once again, due to our insane amount of power we have at this point with the nerfs. The damage amp. We had the Siren Isle ring with its extra damage amping stuff that it does. So it was just like us compared to Liquid on their first kill pull, where they're like going into phase 3, starting the boss at like 60% or so, and then you go from that to us at like 40%, sometimes even sub 40%, like 39, 38%. Like, geez, we had like effectively zero We're gonna spend so little time in phase 3 in comparison, it's not even funny. I did like doing the Acolyte Essence bomb mechanic because I got to, not only did I get to get my soak out of the way early, I was one of the first people to soak and carry it. Like, it was that. Nice thing about doing it early is because you just don't have to really worry about it for the rest of the fight. And as a warrior, you get to I'm sharing all the warrior tips. You can just leap over the ring, so you don't like run the chance of going through too early and like closing the portal on people. And you can milk more damage on the boss in the center if you do it like that. Just you don't want to try to milk it too hard and then get caught by the ring and kill the whole raid. But you know what I mean. You can get a little extra damage in if you're confident. And phase 3 was another like getting to deal with like the tank ad, like AoE, like mass AoE spawn. It always feels good as a Fury Warrior getting a moment like that. We that was like Queen was overall. Again, here's like my inner parse monkey raging at the way it works nowadays, but the old version of the fight where, doing big damage on the Silken Tomb and on the tank ad or whatever at all times, like having big burst AoE all the time, like Fury Warrior was just king at it. I'm really sad I didn't quite get to do the fight in a timeline that allowed for Silken Tomb damage in phase 1 to matter to your parse.
Kill the boss.
They're gonna get it.
Let's go,
Yay,
guys.
champagne
Let's
time.
fucking go.
Let's fucking go, baby.
Oh, how was your job,
Let's get
guys?
a ring and give it to the worst possible person. Oh, okay, never mind.
Talon in my mouth right now.
Let's
Whoa.
fucking go.
Fuck.
I understand why Warcraft Logs decided to exclude that damage, because what was happening is people who want to get rank 1s were just getting assigned like, hey, this guy is the only person pressing their AoE buttons for this thing, because we're going to get him his rank 100. It sucks that people do that shit nowadays. It's like part of the reason why I don't care about like parsing. Like, I still try to do well. I still want to perform well, and like, if I get like 90s and stuff, I'm satisfied. 90s and up, I'm satisfied. I don't need to get rank 100s. It'd be awesome if it happened, but yeah. Other things in phase 3 were scary. It really wasn't all that bad. Like the worst thing that could happen to like me in phase 3 was like accidentally standing in the way of like I did my first Acolyte Essence soak, and then accidentally, like in the next set of ads, accidentally being in the way of the guy dying, and I pick up the bomb, and I'm like, oops, I'm dead, because I'm getting dealt like 5 million damage a second for 15 seconds, however long that effect is. I think that honestly killed me more than anything else, because it was just, I don't know, brain disassociated with like, oh, this guy's about to die and he's going to drop his body and he's going to kill me if I touch him, and I would just be like, nah, I don't care. Warrior zug zug, hit the big boss ass in front of me at any cost. Yeah, it's like Queen overall. It's just like it was for sure like the least satisfying cutting edge I've had so far. In that it just kind of, we spent like 300 pulls doing Sarkrath, we spent 400 pulls doing Farak, and like getting lots and lots of time to like fine tune stuff and like really iron out the kinks. It felt like Queen, you never really, like, obviously you make mistakes in the early phases as you start doing the fight, but like I totally think like a super good guild who, like, let's say they're not like race to world first quality, but they are like very high level players who just like, or whatever reason, like, oh, they lost the first month of progress for whatever reason, like there's definitely a world where like a good enough guild on that fight as it is right now could totally do it sub 100 pulls for cutting edge. I'm sure there has to be at least one guild that's done that. and it's like a little sad to see, but I also don't mind for personal reasons having what was going to be the hardest raid of all time suddenly turn into the easiest raid of all time. It ain't all so bad, just so, I'm already kind of in a carefree mode of not stressing out about still maxing out my 10s on my warrior every week. I can kind of, I haven't even been doing my Mythic Plus on my warrior because there's just kind of no reason to. But, if we hadn't killed it yet, somehow, some way, it would have been, still grinding, doing everything possible to give myself an edge. That'll be the one thing that I am thankful for the easy cutting edge boss for. It's like just being free of the tier sooner, higher chances of getting the mount sooner, I also thank Queen for the night we did kill it. I was going to pop it for New Year's, but I ended up having an extra bottle of champagne. Then, as soon as I killed it, I was like, "Fuck it, we're doing that." At least that was my plan. Essentially the entire night when I knew we were basically gonna kill it that weekend. I think we killed Queen on a Friday, January 4th. Nope, never mind. I was gonna say I thought maybe we got an extra night of no raid in because it was so easy at that point, but maybe not. Reading it was a Saturday raid night, so I guess for me, directly comparing the entirety of the raids together of Nerub-ar Palace versus Amir and Abber, where would it lay? Where would I even put the other raids to? I feel like for how good doing Farak was, I enjoyed myself so much doing Farak. I really enjoyed playing arms in that tier. The talents for it and everything were perfect. I enjoy the big execute. All in on execute and getting the big 30% giga execute thing off. That was what you were playing back then. Playing arms now as it is, it's nowhere near as fun right now compared to how arms was last expansion. So I think for me, it's Amir is still going to be my personal favorite raid. And then it's how does it compare to Abber's too? I would say of the 3 raids I have done full Mythic cutting edge progression on, I do think Nerub-ar Palace is unfortunately the worst of the 3. Princess is a damn good fight in Nerub-ar, but Princess and Sikran can't save the rest of it. As much as I enjoyed the memes in Nerub-ar, I think the other raids are just sort of better of what I've done recently. And again, I'm sure I mentioned this. I've been recording this for a while, with a few breaks in between. But the main downside to Nerub-ar Palace, I mean, this has been a problem for a while in every single raid, but Nerub-ar Palace, I feel especially, is the worst offender of actual frame rate performance in raid. Tindril, I remember, was an actual crime how badly that fight was had performance, frame rate performance, excuse me. But I felt like Nerub-ar Palace as a whole is just a mess. I really hope Undermine, my biggest want for that raid is just that it just plays well. Don't worry about having a bunch of weird spiders crawling on the wall. I don't need to, have that in normal, have it in LFR, have it in the story mode. Don't have it in Mythic, please. I just don't need like whatever weird calculations that are doing that to cause problems. I just want to play the game. And it's like, well, it's your add-ons that are the problem. Yeah, add-ons are definitely part of the problem, but it's a really annoying tug of war. I guess that's that. It's gonna be my disjointed, rambly thoughts on Nerub-ar Palace and War Within Season 1. Still, like, it might be like the worst raid I've done on Mythic in full, but there's still like some fun parts. I enjoyed the Egg Boy times on Broodtwister. I enjoyed the Princess. I enjoyed making boxes with Sikran, you know. Big triangle. There are some like funny things, but yeah, it's just overall a little sad. Again, here's hoping that Undermine's a lot better. I want like a really good raid. I really hope Gallywix slaps. I think like Cutting Edge, like getting that thing, it needs to feel like you really worked for it, and I just I feel like there wasn't quite enough working for it this time around. And I'm happy overall that like we got like better overall raid ranks. You know, we were like for WA, we were like excuse me. We were like world 600 something compared to our usual like maybe like just a little over 1,000. Like we absolutely slapped this tier in comparison. I guess for Rack we were sub 1,000. We were at world 866, going off my YouTube video of it. What was I thinking? Like plus 1,000. Even Sarkras we were also still sub 1,000. I don't know. I mean, again, one way or another, we still jumped like a couple hundred ranks compared to where we're usually at. So I'm very happy in that regard. But like the actual fight was maybe a bit of a letdown. So again, here's hoping the G-man himself, Gallywix, could save the next raid tier. I have already heard from some of my friends who've done some of the early PTR raid testing that like there are some really promising fights coming. So let's all hope that's the case, because we all want good fun raid fights. Hopefully this time around they won't like literally remove mechanics before we get to them this time. So anywho, I guess I think I'll leave it at that. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Huge props to anyone who makes it this far in the video. I should do like I should do like a special code or something. If you make it all the way to the end, make sure to comment, I don't know, lemon meringue pie or something, I don't know. Comment something special, something wacky if you make it all the way to the end. I'd really appreciate it, because I see the old analytics. Not a whole lot of people always make it to the end of my videos. And that's just how YouTube is in general, but yeah. Hope everybody enjoyed. Remember to subscribe. I know we're in a little bit of downtime right now, but Undermine is on the way in the near future, and I'm very much hoping things pick back up. So I'll be seeing everybody then. Have a very good time. Peace out. Here, I hope the camera was on me, because otherwise it'd just be here, I don't know, weirdly rambling. I'll be figuring out in the edit, so enjoy. Goodbye.